This episode of The Nobody Guide to Life is part of a special series called Hosting the Hosts. Our guests in this series are podcast and radio hosts who were gracious enough to have me on their shows to talk about the Nobody Bible and the concept of nobody. They all have interesting shows and stories of their own, and I've asked them to share them with you. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to The Nobody Guide to Life, where we provide tips and tools for personal growth, personal development, and your spiritual journey that you can use right now in your everyday life. I'm J.A. Plosker. Thank you for joining us. It's good to have you here. Find out more at nobodiesview.com or thenobodybible.com, or you can check us out at Twitter and Facebook at Nobody's View. You can also join the Simple Spirituality group on Facebook. If you like what you hear on the podcast, we'd welcome a subscription or a review. We'd really appreciate it. So it's a long journey on this road of personal and spiritual growth, and so many times we get knocked off course or thrown off balance. And when that balance is off, we stumble. And for some people, a coach can be a really great way to get back on track. And for many in the information technology space, my guest today is that coach of choice. Joanne Victoria is a life coach, speaker, host of the podcast The Sanity Project, and author of 7 books, including Lighting Your Path, How to Create the Life You Want, and Pushy for a Moment, Instant Solutions to Everyday Challenges. She's been a real estate broker, CFO, sales and marketing director, and a business owner. Now she brings her skills, intuition, and humor to her coaching business to help people find more success, confidence, fun, and inner peace. Welcome to the show, Joanne.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. How are you today?
I'm great. And I just want to let our listeners know I actually had the privilege of being on your podcast and just could not wait to have you on our show. It was just a really great experience.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I enjoyed it as well. And it was a good episode for the listeners.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We had some laughs. And I just knew when we were having that interview that you were going to be on the Nobody Guide to Life. So I just thank you again for sharing your time with us. So, Joanne, I know you've had quite a journey. And for our listeners of our show, I think where I'd like to start, because there's so much in your background, is I think I'd really like to know what got you onto the path of personal and spiritual growth. So what's that story? How did you get to a place where you could really bring, as we said in the opening, all those skills, intuition and humor? How did you create this coaching business? How did that start?
Well, it started in an interesting way. I was at a crossroads when I was a real estate broker owning my own business in Northern California. And I remember I was sitting at my desk and a friend called, and we had known each other for a long time. And he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "I'm bored. And, I don't know what's happening with my life," and things like that. And he said, "Well, how would you like to do a workshop?" And I said, "How much does it cost?" He said, No. He said, "I want you to co-present it with me." And I had never done that before. And I'm always one to just say yes to most everything.
Right.
And I said, "Okay, what's it about?" And he goes, "Anger." And I said, "Well, that's perfect for me, because that's what used to be one of my defaults, was anger." And it was called the Anger Workshop. And I remember we did it in a small place in Kentfield, California. And I don't know, there may have been 30 people in the audience, and I could tell you what I was wearing. It was one of those moments that you don't forget. And it was a big help on my path to putting my own workshops together, because before I became the coach, I was labels. I don't like labels, but these are the ones that are used today. I was probably a coach at the time, if we want to title myself. But before I became a professional coach, quote unquote, I was doing lots of workshops. I would do weekend workshops that were very intense, because I lived in an area called Marin County, California, which is north of the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. That was filled with people who did workshops and drumming and pick a body process that you might have, whatever, Feldenkrais and this, that, and everything else. And I participated in as much as I could, because once you went to one group, you were involved in another group. So I experienced many things. And I realized I wanted to do my own workshop. Somebody else pointed it out to me that said, you should do your own workshop. So I got coached or consulted by another person who helped me put together 2 programs, a weekend program and then a 4-day retreat for men and women. And the retreat, you had to do the weekend program before you could go to the next step, because I always have it's amazing how it's automatically that I've always had this process where you need to see if you're a fit with me and the work that I do, because was hardcore. The weekends were hardcore, and so were the 4-day retreats. And the 4-day retreats were called the discovery process. I have no idea what the weekend thing was called, but in my files. But it showed me that I had experience in helping people break through their limitations, break through their head, the decisions they made with their head and not the decisions they made with their heart, in order to bring their heart and their head and their gut together. And it worked out very well for the audience. The people were very happy. And that was a beginning in that coaching aspect. Although prior to that, I think I had been guided by angels or gods or the powers that be for a very long time, but I didn't know it.
Well, let me ask you a question. You used an interesting phrase. You said helping people break through. Where do you think that came from? How do you feel that in your life, in the origins of this? How did you know that was a skill that you had?
I didn't. What I did know was that when I was working in sales and real estate, I had instincts, which I now know, but at the time, we're talking decades here, going through different things. When I was in real estate, people would come in to see me, and I would get sent all of the leftovers, shall we say. People would come in the front door to the company that I initially worked with, and they would say, oh, go see Joanne, she'll help you. So they would come in and see me, and they didn't appear to have the money or the thoughts or the ideas, but they did. I was always good at finding the money, whatever they needed to have to purchase the property. But I was even better at determining what they really wanted to buy, because they would say, for example, they would say, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with no maintenance. I don't want to do anything. I just want to have a turnkey, walk in, leave, and no problem. And I would wind up selling them in a half acre with a mini vineyard and a pool. Still in their price range. And when they bought it, they said, how did you know this is what we wanted? Truly what we wanted. And that's where I, not consciously learned, but you can't learn about intuition. You just either are or you're not. And then...
Well, wait, Joanne, is that something that you can always remember doing, even before that? Is that something that's just always been a part of your life?
Well, I've always trusted my instincts. When I moved from New York State to California, when I chose where to live in California, when I chose what to do with my life, it was a process. It wasn't immediate. I think I had this intuitive help early on, and I had protection very early on, because nothing bad happened to me. When I say bad, I'm comparing it to things that are happening that are bad today. None of that stuff occurred with me. I was always protected. There would be something that said, turn around, go the other direction. And that's the bottom line I'll use for all of the things that occurred. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't experience sadness or grief or problems. I did, which I think I learned from. There was a question on Facebook yesterday or the day before. They asked, would you choose this door to go through to relive your life and redo your mistakes, or would you take the $5 million? And I said, I refer to my mistakes as my education. So this is what I learned, and I picked it up, and I'm basically an introvert. So everything kept coming into me, and I never discussed it with anyone. I just kept moving forward. And then years later, there was some other crossroads in my life after I had finished the first aspect of my workshops. I was getting tired of that. I don't know why. I can't remember the cause, but I do remember the result. So I went to see a career counselor. But the career counselor I went to was different because everybody I choose to work with is a little different, as I feel, because we're more creative. I think that's what it is. And he told me, he said, you don't need any training in anything. He said, you're intuitive. You get right to it without a thought.
That's interesting.
And I said, what does that mean? And he just repeated it again. And then I went and, meditated on it and thought about it and realized what he said had power for me. And that conversation, we stayed connected for a while because he did other things that I was interested in. But when he told me, he labeled it that your intuition will get you anywhere. That's where I knew I was going to use my intuition and trust what I've already been trusting up till that point.
So up till that point, and I think this is an important point to bring out for people, is how had you referred to it then up until that meeting? What did it feel like inside of you? For people who are maybe experiencing this or feeling this, how did you process it before that meeting? Was it just a way of life for you?
Well, in a way it was, but it was a gradual way of life. It wasn't an immediate, this is what it is. It was listening unconsciously. Now, this was unconscious until I started, paying more and more attention. I was unconsciously listening to my heart and unconsciously listening to my gut. My head didn't take too much work involved because that was just the head is a different brain. So the brain I used was my heart brain and my gut brain in retrospect. And that's why I would always recommend that people not only pay attention to their heart and their gut, but they act on it. Because I have known myself as well as others, but I only, refer to me. I've known myself to ignore the signs of the intuition or the coming into my gut and my heart thinking, that's not right. That was my head overruling my heart and my gut. And that doesn't work. So I kept moving forward. And then when I was very successful in real estate and people kept coming after me to do things and start companies and so on and so forth, which I did. But I was bored with that too. I say bored. I think there's another word. I think I was dissatisfied because it didn't give me the opportunity to be who I am.
Right.
And then another step occurred when I was doing some consulting to small businesses. And then I got a call from our local newspaper at the time. And they said, we'd like you to write an article for the newspaper. And I said, okay.
Yes.
And 3 days later, they have the article. And that article still stands. And it's quite a while ago. It still stands because everything, I would say 99.9% of what I write is evergreen. It has no limitations on its content. And I started writing. And then I started writing article a week for the column. And that went on for a while until some editor said, no, we have to give somebody else a chance. I said, okay, so it was time to move on. I didn't get upset, maybe for a moment, but nothing. And then I started coaching people, to use that word. I mean, I've always helped people. I always know my job is to help people help themselves, to give them the tools to get out of the valley that they are stuck in.
Right.
And so it went forward. I was coaching before coaching was the term of the day.
Right.
And, it was just the new flavor of ice cream at the time. And then I started helping people with their small business coaching and then their personal development coaching. And then it went on. And then when I moved up here, and then I was doing a combination of coaching and consulting. They're two different things.
Right.
And then when I moved to where I am now, which is 20 minutes north of Seattle, and I was creating a new website and called iknowwhatworks.com. My daughter said, "What you doing, Mom?" And I said, well, she's an adult. So I said, I'm putting, just doing a new spin on what I do. And she says, well, why don't you focus on the people that are here and the market that she's in, which is technology, communication. So I said, okay. To me, it was just a step to the right or to the left on that 360-degree circle.
Right.
Be my next group of people that I could help, because I felt, and I'm correct in that feeling, that if you are an employee or a contractor in a company, you need help, especially today. The company doesn't provide anything, and the leadership is not very good, and they need special private help as opposed to having the company pay for a coach or a consultant to come on board, because there would be no privacy for the client's conversations.
Right.
So I wanted to provide them with safety, security, authenticity, and privacy.
You focus a lot on IT professionals. And so do you make yourself available to clients in a private way, or do you approach the company and then the company assigned? So how does that work?
Well, right now I'm approaching clients directly, employees and contractors, because 50% of the technology world is actually more than 50% are contractors, and they don't get treated really well. So, I would help their confidence issues and so on and so forth, because everybody's got to do something. I imagine at some time there's going to be somebody that says, why don't you call this person in our company and have them work with them to help us on a larger scale. So I see that in the offing. I don't have a plan for that right now. I'm not saying it isn't. It's been in the bottom of my brain for a while, but I could approach a larger company. But they also don't want to spend any money. So I think, this is my thinking right now, and I may be wrong, but my thinking is that if I get success with some people in a place where they think they need more help, that's what's going to help me get into the company, the larger, the bigger umbrella.
So do you have that feeling now of, we use the term, that term allowing now. So are you kind of in a place where you just let this grow organically and just allow these opportunities to come to you? So for people out there who are maybe running a business or struggling with a book marketing or whatever, how do you suggest that they approach those kinds of things based on your years of being guided by intuition?
Approach what kind of things?
Well, things like waiting for opportunities versus making those opportunities happen. So, because you said you're not really sure what the plan is right now. So are you taking a more of a wait and see approach, or are you actively trying to make that happen through marketing efforts?
Well, I'm doing a little bit of both. I am creating another sales page for one of my products, because I will only have, besides the Be Your Authentic Self program, I will only have 2 products, and they will all be one-on-one coaching. One will be a half day. Everything is virtual. Even though I live very close to these things, nobody's right now really has the time to leave the work and meet with me personally to do this. So virtually, they're used to being on the phone and on meetings, so it's not going to be a problem for them.
Right.
So I'm creating the 2 programs, and I think the 2 programs will get some attention. And as I keep working towards a macro view of this, I keep receiving information. So I'm collecting data so that when I do take my next step, for example, I received an email the other day about a tech, maybe it was a tech, I'm not sure, conference. And there were all of these speakers, and all of these speakers were defined as to what they did, where they worked. Well, these are people I can contact directly, either a phone call or an email or a text somehow, and start the ball rolling in the macro view as opposed to the individual view. So as I focus on what I want, as you know, anything we focus on becomes bigger. And, what we focus on, we get. And we get and then we have to discern, of course. but I think that some things are coming through, and I have been giving some. I have been given some insights on how to go after other people, other companies. For example, somebody suggested off the top of their head. One of my guests said, "Why don't you contact the accountants that these companies use?" And I thought, well, I was at a loss, going, "What?" Well, I was told my next issue of Seattle Business Magazine had a full column ad for this accountant for IT professionals.
Wow.
So I had these things kind of appear, and I pay attention to them. I collect all of this data, and I create a system for contacting them, and then I will move forward with that. Make some phone calls, emails, or texts, whatever are the easiest. So I would say a combination of both. However, you better know where you're going when you do this. I prefer to be, I know things change as one moves forward, even if I had the perfect plan, which I don't and never have, by the way. I like to have some sort of a plan as a guide so that I don't walk into too many walls and get too many bruises and don't come off looking like I'm incompetent. But even that, I'm not really worried, because what's the worst that can happen? They might not like me. So what? You
Right.
know?
And I think this is so valuable. See, that's why, and on your show as well, the value of interviewing people from so many different backgrounds is that you really find out how people are applying these personal growth and spiritual tools to their professional life. And your message is important, because I think sometimes people out there think, I either have to make things happen or I have to step back and let things happen. And I think there's a middle road. And I think one of the values of hearing you tell this story is that you've always sort of lived in that middle road. You showed up for opportunities and then let opportunities arrive. And I think that's a very powerful message. And I think you're talking about intuition. That's so important, because you brought it into the opportunities that came your way, and it kept guiding you and guiding you.
And it still does to this day. It's not anything that I can stop, because it's part of it makes me who I am. And,
Right.
I remember years and years ago I shouldn't keep saying years and years ago. It's like I'm 100, which I'm not. I've worked a lot. And it seems like a long time ago. But when I was doing the intro, free, come see Joanne at the hotel for a free night, that kind of thing in the big room. And I would tell people about the first stage of the workshop, the weekend presentation, and people would come up with, because this was my consideration at the time, what are your credentials?
Yes.
Once I put that to bed mentally and going, these don't matter, because I have my intuition and the trust in what I'm doing, that God is providing me with the safety of doing this. I put that to bed, and no one ever asked that question again.
I think that's really important. You asked me to repeat something on your show, so I'm going to ask you to repeat that here. Can you say that again?
People used to ask me in a crowded room, what were my credentials? And I was stuck, because this was my issue that I brought to the room, because I part of who I was at the time. And then I don't know what I said. I have a good gift of gab. I probably just said my experience, which I think is true. And then I put it to bed. When I looked at it, I just said, this is an unnecessary thing to keep hanging on yourself, Joanne. You have got the skills to do what you're doing, because you're doing it. And there are results. So I just put it off to the side, and it went into its own universe. It's not a part of my life anymore. And if somebody asked me that same question today, I would just say, it's over 25, 30 years of experience and results.
I love that. And that's so important for people out there who are, that's the whole nobody concept. Who am I to write this book? Who am I to do this? We talked about this a few episodes ago. We were interviewing Greg Davis, a photographer, and we got into a discussion of this. When you find yourself saying, who am I to do this? Who am I to do this? People are going to question you and say, who are you to do this? And I think that message is just so important. And it brings me to this question. You said something on your website. You said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And I think that's part of this Be Your Authentic Self program. And can you talk to us a little bit about that quote? The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. What does that mean to you?
Well, as I've experienced things in my life, and I didn't know who I was at the very beginning, although there are some, spiritual things going on there, like, should I really have been born because I died before I was born, but yet I was born? So all of that's another conversation between you and I.
Wow.
But to know who you are, I mean, to get to that before you die, it is a privilege, because then you go, oh my God, this is who I am, and I've been wasting my time. Now I know who I am, and I can step forward and be who I am, even if I do nothing.
Wow. What does authenticity mean to you? That's a really powerful statement you just made right there. What does authenticity mean to you? What is that word to you?
It's telling the truth. It's telling your truth. It's not saying, I don't like that movie, or I don't like that. That's not the truth. That's BS. That's, and we all judge. It's judgment. So whatever. But authenticity is to tell the truth. And believe me, I'm very bottom line. So when I help people, if people are resistant to see the truth about themselves, and if I'm going around the circle and I've tried every way, believe me, I'm going to just get really bottom line and direct with them. If anybody knows me, has worked with me, they know I'm very direct, because there is no time to waste in finding who you truly are.
Yes. And so what do you do in your program? How do you use your program how does your program help people come around to that?
Well, in my Be Your Authentic Self program, it's a home study program. This is for people who don't want to deal with another person, have no confidence in sharing anything about who they are, just don't feel comfortable in talking to people as yet. But when they take the course, they will, they'll get practical solutions. I come up with practical solutions to every part of your life. And if you read the information, you would see that. Whoever would read the information. So there's always a lot of value. My value is intuitive and practical, because I'm a very pragmatic person. If that doesn't work, don't do it. It hurts.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it hurts when I put my hand on the stove. Don't put your hand on the stove.
Right.
But people don't. That's a basic, but people don't know that. So I want people to get back into their heart. That's the real bottom line, which I avoid saying directly, but I may add that to my next sales page, by bringing them some joy. If they have peace, they'll have joy and happiness. But if they have no peace, they can't have anything. And then my one-on-ones, as I say, it's just a variety of times. You could either work with me the half day, or 3 months, or 6 months, or an entire year. It's all about them being true to themselves and finding out how to live a full life, especially with the IT people who don't have a balance between their personal and business life. They have nothing. They just, they're robots before. They're being robots before the robots are made to do their work.
Right. And it is possible to work a job and be authentic. I think sometimes we think we have to make a choice. Well, someday. Well, after I retire. Well, you know what? I give up and I'm just going to. They're not mutually exclusive.
No.
Just because you can't stand at your desk and scream your truth doesn't mean you can't arrive at your desk and be true to yourself. I mean, these things aren't mutually exclusive.
It's just a choice that you make. When you go to work, you be who you are, but you don't get entangled with other people's issues. Everybody brings their personal self to the job. Everybody. Right. No matter who you are, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer. I've had personal experience in the last year with both of those people. And they bring themselves to the table. So you have to know who you are so that you have yourself protected against the negativity of the other people that you're surrounded by, whether they're outside contractors or, doctors, lawyers, or people that you work with. When you come home, it's a different story. So there's a box that you put yourself in when you go to work. The box is as big as you want it to be. You can invite as many people into that room as you want, but you have to have a safe place for you to be. And that's why I try to, surround myself with light when I'm talking to people, and even before I sit down to the computer, because you turn on that computer screen and you've got millions of people's energy coming at you. People don't know that. That's why they get tired when they're in front of a computer so long. It's about just being who you are at work to the limits that you can be. You have to use your head and not, complain all the time about, I can't be myself. Well, if you feel good about yourself, you feel good about your job, and other people bring you down, learn how to handle the other people. And that's what I help people do.
Wow. And you do it with straight talk.
Well, is there any other? There is no other way for me. Nobody would believe me if I mushed my way through a coaching consult. They just wouldn't believe me.
Right. No, it's because it wouldn't be authentic. People can tell, whether or not we've gone down any road towards authenticity in a formal way. This brings us back to that intuition. We all know when we walk into a room, we get a sense. We just get a sense. And we need deepening that sense really helps us stand in our own truth, and it helps us acknowledge who other people are too. Just because we're being ourselves doesn't mean other people don't have that same right. And that's the danger of, I think, something you were saying before, which was so positive. We don't want to be ourselves to the point where we exclude others. Is that something you address? Because it sounds like you do.
Well, if someone is harming you, you have to manage that.
Right.
I'm just talking about, there's no need to exclude anybody. All of the society's issues today were not present when I was growing up. So I was able to, not in its such negativity. So I was able to just be a normal human being among other normal human beings. And there was no exclusion, whether you were, what religion you were, what color you were, where you went to school. All of that was the same to me, and it's never changed. So I come from that perspective that, you don't blame people for what they look like or what religion they practice. You don't blame anybody anyway, because it's your perception of them that's the issue.
Yes, I love that. And, let other people be who they are is such an important piece of this, because I think sometimes we take on the mantle of, we put on biases and prejudices, and we call that our authentic self.
Right.
When maybe it isn't. So being who we are also means allowing others to be who they are. And I have one more question for you. What's a tip or tool that you can offer our listeners that they can use right now? As soon as this podcast is over, from all of your years of experience, what's something that you can give to our listeners that they can use today?
Well, one thing I would say is, if you're sitting in your car or at work or at home, find a quiet place and put your hand over your heart. Ask your heart any question you want to ask, and whatever answer you get is correct. Then put your hand over your heart and your gut and ask your heart and your gut, do they agree? And if they agree, then you do it. You don't wait, you don't question, you don't judge, you don't challenge, you don't try to be right with your head, which is what a lot of people do, with everybody else. Don't go to your head, go to your gut and go to your heart. Because you only have two hands, and those are the two things that capture your gut and your heart. Trust those instincts, but ask the question, or ask if they have information for you. It's a two-way street. You can ask the question or ask if they have information for you, your heart and your gut. Trust that and follow that. Even if you, quote unquote, fail, and I hate doing the quote unquote thing, but I don't know any other way to say it, even if that message fails, that means it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It matters that you took the chance and you're practicing.
Yeah.
You're practicing trusting yourself. But not trusting your head so much, because your head makes up stories and you don't need stories. Trusting your gut and trusting your heart. And we lead with the heart, when we stand and sit and walk. We don't lead with the head, because that would look a little odd. So we lead with the heart. No matter if we have good posture, we lead with the heart.
Well, that is an absolutely beautiful tool that I hope people use, because it brings together the best of so many different tools. It brings together listening to your intuition, and it brings together meditation. It brings together mindfulness, and it's so simple. And as our mantra here on the show, it's a tip or tool that you can use right now, and you don't need any fame, fortune, or ordination to do it. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So as we close, I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much, Joanne Victoria. Thank you so much for your time and insight. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate being here. I'm glad you invited me because it gave me an opportunity to share things that I haven't thought about in a long time.
It was a privilege. Thank you so much. And if you're listening, remember, sometimes we all need a little support on the journey. And just because we may need a little guidance doesn't mean the journey isn't authentic and that it isn't ours. Sometimes we just need a fresh perspective. So when you see intuitive coach out there, that's what you're seeing. People who want to help you to be your very best. So you can find out more about Joanne Victoria at askjoannevictoria.com, and so many other links. I'll have links to her podcast, The Sanity Project, and her books. All that will be in the show notes. And it was such a pleasure. And remember, you can always find out more about what we're doing at nobodiesview.com or thenobodybible.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter and Facebook at Nobody's View, or join our Facebook community, Simple Spirituality. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please consider a review or a subscription. We'd really appreciate it. Keep practicing and have a good week.